The smell hit Danny Harlow before anything else did. Sweet and burnt, like sugar left too long on a stove, mixed with the sharp tang of melted wiring. He stood at the cargo ramp of the drifting mule, crate scanner in hand, and watched Brannock Station fall apart around him. People were running. Not the hurried walk of someone late for work. Real running. Families dragging children by their wrists. Merchants abandoning their stalls with goods still spread across tables. A Curity trader knocked over an entire rack of bottled solvents and did not stop to pick them up. Danny had been hauling freight across the Mid-Rim for 6 years. He had seen panic stations before. Pirate raids, reactor leaks, political riots. But this felt different. The fear on people's faces was not anger or confusion. It was pure animal terror, the kind that shut down thinking and left only legs. Danny stopped staring and started scanning. Captain Renai's voice crackled through his earpiece. She stood at the top of the ramp, her blue-scaled jaw tight with irritation. "We unload, we collect payment, we leave. Whatever is happening here is not our business." Danny nodded and went back to work. But he kept watching. Oben shuffled up beside him, all four arms loaded with cargo manifests. The Curity engineer's gray-brown fur was standing on end, which meant he was nervous. Oben was always nervous, but today his small dark eyes kept darting toward the lower corridors. "Something big in the tunnels," Oben muttered. Mining crew woke it up. 2 survey teams went down. Neither came back. "What kind of something?" Danny asked. "The kind that makes 40,000 people run uphill." A deep rumble rolled through the station floor. Not an explosion. Something organic. Like the growl of an animal so large that its voice traveled through stone instead of air. The lights flickered. A child screamed somewhere in the crowd. Danny set down his scanner and walked to the nearest public terminal. He pulled up the station security feeds, cycling through cameras until he found the one pointed at the lower merchant quarter. The creature filled the screen that IT was enormous. 6 limbs, each one thick as a shuttle landing strut, ending in clawed feet that cracked the floor with every step. Its body was covered in dark plated armor, segmented like an insect, and beneath those plates ran veins of light. Bioluminescent lines that pulsed in angry shades of red and orange, like lava flowing beneath black rock that a void crawler. Danny had heard stories. Class 9 extinction-level organism. The kind of thing that showed up in military briefings as a reason to avoid certain regions of space entirely. He had never expected to see one dot on the screen. A line of station security officers opened fire. Plasma bolts hit the creature's armor and scattered like sparks off a grinding wheel. The void crawler screamed. The sound was so loud that the camera feed distorted, the image shaking. Then the creature lunged forward and swept one massive limb through the barricade. Bodies flew. Metal twisted. The barricade ceased to exist. Danny watched the footage a second time. Then a third. Something was wrong. Not wrong with the creature. Wrong with the story the footage was telling that he watched the moment before each attack. The soldiers raised their weapons. The creature flinched. Then the soldiers fired. Then the creature attacked. IT flinched before the shots. Not after. Danny rewound again. The security team entered the corridor. They had not fired yet. They had not even aimed. But the creature was already reacting. Pulling back. Veins flashing brighter. Head shaking side to side like a dog, trying to escape a sound only it could hear. That IT was not responding to the weapons. It was responding to the people. Their fear. Their aggression. Something about the emotions in that corridor was hitting the creature before a single trigger was pulled. Danny stood at the terminal for a long time, the evacuation crowd flowing past him like a river around stone. He thought about a dog he had known once, years ago, cornered in an alley behind a grocery store. Animal control said it was rabid. Dangerous. Put it down. Danny had sat on the cold ground and waited. 40 minutes. The dog came to him on its own. It was not rabid. It was terrified. "Danny." Captain Renai's voice cut through his thoughts. "Back on the ship. Now, we are leaving in 15 minutes. He looked at the screen one more time. The void crawler had stopped moving. It stood in the wreckage of the merchant quarter, its massive body heaving, veins flickering between red and something darker. It was not chasing anyone. It was not hunting. That IT was standing still in the middle of the destruction it had caused, and it looked exactly like that dog in the alley. Danny turned and walked back toward the drifting mule. The cargo ramp was still down. Oben was inside, already strapping things down for departure. Captain Renai stood at the top of the ramp, arms crossed. Waiting for him, he stopped at the bottom of the ramp. "Danny," Renai said. Her tone had shifted from irritation to warning. She could read humans well enough to know when one was about to do something stupid. "I need to go down there," Danny said. "No, you do not. Captain, that thing is not hunting. It is hurting. It has killed people, Danny." "I know." He set his earpiece on the cargo ramp. "I know it has." He turned and walked into the crowd, moving against the current, heading down while everyone else pushed up. Renai called after him once. He did not turn around. The rumble came again through the floor, and Danny Harlow walked toward it. The corridors of Brannock Station were built for slow, steady traffic. Merchant carts, supply drones, families walking to the market caverns on a quiet afternoon. They were not built for 40,000 people trying to reach the upper docking levels at the same time. Danny pressed himself against the wall and let the river of bodies push past him. Sulbari families moved in tight clusters, their scaled hands gripping children. Kiriti traders stumbled on short legs, fur bristling, eyes wide. A group of Pelori workers, thin and pale with translucent skin, moved in perfect unison like a school of fish, their terrors synchronized. Nobody looked at Danny. Nobody cared about one human going the wrong direction. They had bigger problems. He reached the junction where Corridor 7 split into the lower market access ramp. The lights down here were dimmer. Half the overhead panels had been knocked out. The floor was cracked in places, deep gouges running through the stone where something massive had dragged itself through, footsteps behind him. Fast ones. "Danny, wait." Oben caught up to him, all four arms swinging, breathing hard. The karate's fur was completely on in now, making him look twice his actual size. His small, dark eyes were bright with fear. "What are you doing here?" Danny asked. "Following you, which I'm already regretting." Oben looked down the dark corridor, and his whole body shivered. "The feeds say the creature is in the central market chamber. That is 2 levels below us." "I know. You know." "Good. So you also know that it weighs approximately 9,000 kilograms and has armor rated to withstand military-grade plasma fire." "Yes." "And you are walking toward it with no weapon and no plan." Danny considered this. "I have part of a plan." "Which part?" "The sitting down part." Oben stared at him. Among the Kiriti, there was a well-known saying that roughly translated to, "Humans are either the smartest creatures in the galaxy or the most broken, and there is no way to tell which until it is too late." Oben had always thought it was an exaggeration. Standing in a dark corridor with Danny Harlow, he was reconsidering. They moved together down 2 more corridors. The damage grew worse. Walls were torn open, exposing wiring and pipe systems. A merchant stall had been crushed flat, its contents scattered across the floor. Somewhere ahead, a deep rhythmic thudding echoed through the stone. Not footsteps, more like something hitting the walls over and over. Oben stopped. His legs locked. His 4 arms wrapped around his own torso, and his breathing went shallow and rapid. Danny recognized it immediately. The Kiriti biological fear response. Their homeworld had no apex predators, so evolution had given them something different from a fight or flight instinct. When a Kiriti sensed a large predator nearby, their body simply froze. Every muscle locked down. It was involuntary. Oben could not move forward, even if he wanted to. "It is okay," Danny said quietly. "Stay here. I cannot move anyway." Oben managed through clenched teeth. "Danny, please. Think about this." "I have been thinking about it." Danny pulled his earpiece from his pocket and fitted it back in. He had picked it up from the cargo ramp on his way out. "Keep this channel open. If you find anything about void crawlers, anything at all, tell me." Oben nodded, still frozen in place, and Danny walked on alone. The central market chamber opened up ahead of him. It was a wide, vaulted space carved from the moon's natural rock, tall enough to fit a small freighter inside. Merchant stalls had lined the walls in neat rows, selling everything from engine parts, to cooked food to alien textiles. Now most of those stalls were flattened. The floor was littered with debris. Emergency lights cast everything in a dull red glow. And in the center of it all, the void crawler. Danny stopped at the top of the access ramp and looked down at it. The creature was even larger in person than it had appeared on the security feeds. Its dark exoskeleton plates shifted as it breathed, each breath a slow, grinding motion that sounded like stone sliding against stone. The bioluminescent veins beneath its armor pulsed in uneven, jagged patterns. Red, orange, a flash of something almost white, like pain made visible that IT was not moving. It stood in the middle of the wreckage, its 6 massive limbs braced against the floor, its head low. Every few seconds, it would slam one limb into the wall beside it, not attacking anything, just hitting, the way a person in agony might pound their fist against a table. Danny watched for a long time. He counted the rhythm of the vein pulses, fast and irregular. He watched the creature's head move, shaking side to side, mandibles opening and closing around sounds that were too low for him to hear properly. He remembered something from his 2 years of veterinary school before the debt had forced him out. A professor talking about pain responses in animals. When an animal is in pain, it does not always cry. Sometimes it goes still. Sometimes it becomes aggressive. And sometimes it does the thing that confuses people the most. It destroys everything around it. Not because it wants to cause harm, but because it cannot find the source of what is hurting it and it is trying to make it stop. Danny sat down on the access ramp. He crossed his legs. He rested his hands on his knees. He closed his eyes and took one long, slow breath. Then he opened his eyes and began his walk down the ramp toward the creature that had killed more than a dozen people in the last 6 hours. He did not run. He did not crouch or hide. He walked at the pace of someone crossing a room to sit by a window. And when he reached the floor of the market chamber, he sat down again, 50 meters from Void Crawler. The creature's head turned toward him. Those massive mandibles spread open. A vibration rolled through the floor so strong that Danny felt it in his chest. He did not move, that he breathed, and he waited. 47 minutes. That is how long Danny Harlow had been sitting on the cold stone floor of the central market chamber when the void crawler took its first step toward him. He felt it before he saw it. A tremor through the ground, heavier than the background vibrations, followed by the slow, grinding creak of an armored limb lifting and setting down. Then another. Then nothing. The creature had moved maybe 5 meters closer and stopped. Danny kept his breathing steady. In through the nose for counts. Out through the mouth, 6 counts. He thought about the lake his parents had taken him to as a child. Pine trees around the edges. Water, so still you could see clouds reflected in it. A place where nothing was in a hurry and nothing was afraid. That he thought about those things on purpose. Because somewhere in the back of his mind, the part of him that had spent 2 years studying how animals process the world was telling him that this creature could feel what he was feeling. And if that was true, then the calmest thing in this chamber needed to be him. The void crawler's veins had changed. When Danny first entered the market, they pulsed in harsh, jagged patterns of red and orange. Now the red had faded to something softer, a deep amber, still unsteady, still flickering, but no longer the violent strobing of a creature in full crisis progress. Maybe his earpiece crackled. Danny, Oben's voice, still tight with residual fear but functioning. I have been searching the station's academic database. There's almost nothing on void crawlers that is not military. Kill reports, weapon assessments, ammo penetration charts. But I found one paper. One. Published 11 years ago by a human researcher named Dr. Fenn. It was rejected by every major journal. What does it say? Danny whispered. He kept his voice low and even, the same tone he would use if he were reading a bedtime story. Dr. Fenn theorized that void crawlers possess a form of empathic reception. They absorb ambient emotional energy from living beings around them. The paper suggests their bioluminescent veins function as both a sensory network and an involuntary display of their internal state. Red and orange indicate distress. Blue indicates calm. Danny looked at the creature's veins. Amber. Getting there. Oben. What happens when a void crawler wakes up near a populated station? A pause. 40,000 frightened people, all broadcasting fear at the same time. Another pause. It would be like waking up inside a scream that never stops. Yes, Danny said. That is exactly what it would be like. The void crawler moved again. 3 more steps. It was 30 meters away now. Close enough that Danny could see details he had missed on the security feeds. Scars on its exoskeleton, old ones, layered over with new growth. The way its mandibles did not open aggressively but trembled, like a jaw shivering from cold. The thin membrane behind its main armor plates that expanded and contracted with each breath. It was alive in a way that the military reports never captured. Not a weapon, not a disaster. An animal. A very large, very old, very frightened animal. Danny began to talk. Not loudly, not with any urgency. He talked the way a person talks when they are alone and thinking out loud. We had a pretty boring cargo run getting here, he said. 40 crates of water filtration units. Oben dropped one on his foot on day 3 and complained about it for the rest of the trip. Captain Renai told him to stop whining or she would drop the next one on his other foot. The void crawler's head tilted. One of its secondary eyes, small and dark, and set behind the main pair, focused on Danny. The trembling in its mandibles slowed. The food on the drifting mule is terrible, Danny continued. Renai says it builds character. I think it builds stomach problems. Oben smuggles spice packets from every station we visit and hides them in the engine room. He thinks nobody knows. Everyone knows. A sound came from the creature. Not the deep destructive vibration from before. Something different. Lower. Softer. A hum that Danny felt more in his bones than in his ears. It rose and fell in a rhythm that seemed to match the pace of his voice, that he kept talking. About the station lights that reminded him of the colored bulbs his neighbors used to hang outside their house in December. About the way artificial gravity always felt slightly wrong compared to standing on real ground. About how he missed weather. Real weather. Rain that smelled like dirt and wind that actually went somewhere. The void crawler settled. Its 6 massive limbs folded slowly, the joints creaking, and its body lowered to the ground with a groan of shifting armor plates. Its head came to rest on the stone floor, 15 meters from where Danny sat. At this distance, the creature's eye was the size of his entire torso. It watched him with an expression that Danny, in all his limited human ability to read alien faces, could only describe as exhausted. The veins pulsed. Amber shifted to gold. Gold shifted to something that was almost, not quite, but almost green. On the station's security network, a technician who had been monitoring the feeds from Shelter 3 levels up leaned back in his chair and said to the room, "Are you all seeing this?" They were. The feed from the market chamber camera had been picked up by the station's emergency broadcast system. It was playing on every public screen in every shelter and corridor. Thousands of beings watched a single human sit cross-legged on a ruined floor, talking quietly to a creature that weighed 9,000 kilograms, and the creature was lying down like a dog at the foot of a bed. Captain Renai watched from the drifting mule's bridge, her arms folded, her jaw tight. She did not say a word. Oben watched from the corridor where his body had frozen, now able to move again, but choosing not to. He sat against the wall with his 4 arms wrapped around his knees and listened to Danny's voice through the open channel, talking about rain in the market chamber. Danny Harlow sat perfectly still and watched the void crawler breathe. Each breath was slower than the last. Each pulse of light was steadier. The creature was not calm yet, but it was closer to calm than it had been since the moment it woke up, and for the first time in hours, Brannick Station was quiet. 3 hours and 12 minutes. That is how long Danny had been sitting on the stone floor, and his body was making sure he knew it. His lower back had gone from aching to burning. His left leg was completely numb from the knee down. His right hip felt like someone had driven a nail into the joint. He needed water. He needed to stand up and stretch. He needed to use a bathroom. He did none of those things. The void crawler lay on the floor of the destroyed market chamber, its massive body stretched out like a sleeping animal, its head resting on the stone 15 meters from Danny. Its breathing had slowed to a deep, rhythmic cycle that Danny could feel through the ground. Each inhale was a low pull of air that made loose debris skitter across the floor. Each exhale was a warm rush that smelled faintly of copper and something sweet, like overripe fruit. The bioluminescent veins had changed again. The angry reds and oranges were gone entirely. In their place, a deep gold pulsed and steady, even waves across the creature's body. Not calm yet, but no longer in crisis. Something between exhaustion and the beginning of trust. Danny noticed something new. The rhythm of the creature's veins was matching something. He sat very still and listened. His own heartbeat, slow and steady from 3 hours of controlled breathing. The void crawler's bioluminescent pulse was syncing with IT, that IT was responding to his heartbeat. He thought about what Oben had told him. Empathic reception. The creature absorbed ambient emotional energy. For the last 3 hours, the only emotional energy within 50 meters had been Danny's. And Danny had spent those 3 hours thinking about lakes and rain and the quiet moments between cargo runs when the ship was still and the stars were bright. He had been feeding the creature calm, and the creature was drinking it in like water in a desert. Oben, Danny whispered into his earpiece. Still here. Oben's voice was steadier now. I've been reading more. Dr. Finn's paper includes spectral analysis of voidcrawler bioluminescence. The color spectrum maps to emotional state. Red is pain and fear. Orange is agitation. Gold is uncertainty. Green is neutral. Blue is... He paused. Blue is what Dr. Finn calls contentment. Peace. We are at gold, Danny said. I can see. The entire station can see. You are on every screen, Danny. Danny had not thought about that. He pushed it aside. Audience did not matter. The creature mattered. He looked at the void crawler's eye. It was still watching him. That massive dark eye, the size of his chest, with a pupil that shifted and dilated in response to the light of its own veins. There was something in that eye that Danny had seen before in animals. Not intelligence in the way most species measured it. Something deeper. Awareness. The creature knew he was there. It knew he was different from the others. Danny slowly raised his hand. Palm open. Fingers relaxed. He held it out in front of him, about waist height, the way he had held it out to the feral dog in the alley all those years ago. No reaching. No grabbing. Just an offering. Here I am. You can come closer if you want to. The void crawler watched his hand. Its mandibles moved, not the aggressive spreading from before, but a slow, careful adjustment, like a person working their jaw after clenching it too long. A sound came from deep inside its body. That low hum again, the one Danny had felt in his bones earlier. It rose and pitched slightly. Almost a question. Minutes passed. The creature's nearest limb, the front right one, moved. Slowly. So slowly that Danny could hear every click of its armored joints. It reached forward and set itself down on the stone, 3 meters from Danny's hand. The clawed foot pressed into the ground and was still. The veins around that limb shifted. Gold to green. Green spread up through the joint, across the shoulder plate, and faded back to gold at the body. But had been there. Blue's neighbor. The first sign of something other than pain or uncertainty. Danny named the creature in that moment. Not out loud, just in his mind. Sable. For the dark, almost black sheen of its exoskeleton in the dim emergency lighting. It seemed right. A name made it real. Made it a someone instead of something. Director Paleth is on the command channel, Oben said through the earpiece. He is demanding Captain Renai order you out. Military strike team arrives in 2 hours. Danny said nothing. Renai told him no. There was something like admiration in Oben's voice. She said, and I am quoting, "My crew member appears to have the situation under control. Your soldiers would make it worse." On the public screens, the station watched. In the shelters where thousands of frightened beings have been packed together for hours, people stopped talking. They watched the feed. A human sitting on a floor. A monster lying beside him. The monster's lights slowly changing color. A Kiriti child in Shelter 9 pointed to the screen and said, "It is not scary anymore, Mama." In the market chamber, Sable moved again. The great head lifted from the floor, just slightly, and the creature extended its nearest limb the final distance. The clawed foot touched the ground centimeters from Danny's open hand. Danny did not grab. He did not flinch. He lowered his hand gently and placed his palm on the creature's limb. The exoskeleton was warm. Not cold like he had expected. Warm, with a faint vibration running beneath the surface, like a heartbeat translated into trembling. The armor plates were smooth in some places and rough in others, scarred from a life Danny could not imagine. Sable shuddered. The entire massive body contracted once, a ripple running from head to tail. Then the veins changed green, spreading outward from the point where Danny's hand rested. Green flowing up the limb, across the chest plates, down the spine, reaching toward the tail. And behind the green, following it like dawn following the horizon, the faintest edge of blue. Danny pressed his hand more firmly against the warm armor and whispered, "I know. It hurts. I know." The blue spread, slowly, unevenly, retreating and advancing, but spreading, and Sable, the creature that had terrorized a station of 40,000, leaned its massive head down until its jaw rested on the floor beside the small human who was the first living thing in its entire existence that did not hurt to be near. The strike team came through the east corridor in formation. 12 soldiers in full assault armor, visors down, plasma rifles charged. Their boots hit the stone floor in perfect rhythm, a sound designed to communicate control and authority to anyone listening. Commander Dressen led them. He was Sulbari, tall and broad, his blue-green scales muted behind the gray plating of his tactical suit. He had killed 2 void crawlers in his career. Both times it had taken an entire platoon, specialized munitions, and 16 hours. Both times there had been significant casualties. He did not expect today to be different. Director Paleth walked 2 steps behind the formation, his civilian suit looking absurd next to the military hardware surrounding him. He had authorized the kill order 40 minutes ago. By his calculation, this would be over quickly. The creature would be destroyed, the station would reopen, and the trade revenue he had been hemorrhaging for the last 8 hours would begin to recover. Neither of them expected what they found in the central market chamber. The strike team stopped at the top of the access ramp. 12 soldiers trained to face extinction-level organisms stood in a line and stared at the scene below. The void crawler lay on the floor of the destroyed market. Its body was relaxed, limbs folded beneath it, head resting on the stone. Its bioluminescent veins pulsed in a steady, gentle blue, the color of deep water on a clear day. And leaning against the creature's right foreleg, sitting on the ground with his legs stretched out in front of him like a man resting against a tree, was Danny Harlow. He looked up when the soldiers appeared. He did not stand. "Commander," Paleth said, his voice tight with something between confusion and annoyance. "The creature is right there. Proceed." Dressen did not move immediately. He had seen void crawlers in combat, screaming, thrashing, shredding armor and bodies with equal indifference. He had never seen one lying still. He had never seen one glowing blue. "Sir," one of his soldiers said quietly, "the civilian is in the direct line of fire." "Clear the civilian first," Dressen ordered. He activated his external speaker. "Human, step away from the creature. We are authorized to neutralize the threat." Danny's voice came back, calm and conversational, as if he were declining a second cup of coffee. "If I move, it will wake up. If it wakes up to 12 armed soldiers broadcasting fear and aggression, it will react the same way it reacted to every other armed team that approached it. More people will die." Dressen paused. "The creature is a Class 9 threat. The creature has been lying still for 4 hours because for the first time since it woke up, it is not in pain." Danny did not raise his voice. "Your weapons will not kill it before it kills several of you. I have watched the security footage. 2 barricade teams tried the same thing. You know how that ended." Silence on the ramp. Paleth stepped forward. "This is absurd. Commander, you have your orders." But Dressen was a soldier, not a bureaucrat. He had lost people to void crawlers before. He looked at the creature's blue veins, then at the human sitting against its leg, and he hesitated. "Commander," Danny said, "let me ask you one thing. In your 2 previous encounters, did the void crawlers ever stop fighting?" Dressen's jaw tightened behind his visor. No, this one stopped. I'm telling you why it stopped. It is empathic. It absorbs the emotions of every living thing around it. 40,000 terrified people turned this station into a torture chamber for it. It was not attacking. It was trying to make the pain stop. I sat down and gave it something that was not pain, and it responded. Sable shifted. The massive head lifted slightly from the floor, one eye turning toward the ramp where the soldiers stood. The veins flickered. A thread of amber ran through the blue, just for a moment. Danny placed his hand on the creature's leg. Easy, he said softly. The amber faded. Blue returned. On the station broadcast, every screen showed the same image. A human with his hand on a monster, and the monster choosing to be still. In Shelter 9, the Kiriti child who had said the creature was not scary anymore was now standing on a bench, shouting at the screen. Leave them alone. Other voices joined. In Shelter 4, a group of Pelori workers began chanting something in their own language. In the docking levels, merchants who had fled their stalls hours ago stood in clusters, watching, and one by one they began calling the station's public feedback channel to say the same thing. Stand down. Dressen received the communication on his command channel. The colonial governor, who had authorized the strike through Paleth, was reversing the order. Public pressure, political calculation, or maybe something simpler. Maybe the governor had watched the same feed as everyone else and seen what everyone else had seen. Commander, the governor's voice said, hold position. Do not engage. Pending review. Paleth's face went rigid. Governor, this creature has caused millions in damage and killed station personnel. We cannot simply hold position, Director. That is final. Dressen raised his fist. The soldiers lowered their weapons. The corridor went quiet. Danny let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. His hand stayed on Sable's leg. The creature's veins pulsed blue, steady and slow, matching the rhythm of Danny's heart. Thank you, Danny said. He was not sure if he was talking to the commander or the governor or the thousands of people watching on their screens who had raised their voices. Dressen looked down at him from the ramp. Behind his visor, his expression was unreadable. But when he spoke, his voice had lost its commanding edge. How long can you stay there? Danny leaned his head back against the warm armor of the Voidcrawler's leg and closed his eyes. As long as it takes. 48 hours later, a shuttle landed at Brannock Station carrying 3 humans, 2 Pelori, and enough scanning equipment to fill a cargo bay. Dr. Finn stepped off first. She was 61 years old, gray-haired, and walked with the particular energy of a person who had waited 11 years to hear someone say the words, "You were right." Danny was still in a market chamber when the xenobiology team arrived. He had slept twice, in short stretches, leaning against Sable's foreleg. Oben had brought him water and ration bars. The Kiriti tiptoeing into the chamber with his fur only slightly raised, all 4 hands shaking, leaving the supplies within Danny's reach and retreating quickly. Each time, Sable's veins flickered briefly at the new presence, then settled back to blue when Oben left. Doctor Finn entered the chamber slowly, her scanning equipment strapped across her back. She stopped 20 meters from the creature and simply looked at it for a long time. 11 years, she said quietly. 11 years, I have been telling people these creatures are not monsters. They did not listen. Danny asked. They listen the way people listen to things they find inconvenient. They nodded and then funded more weapons research. She set down her equipment and began unpacking. Every previous encounter followed the same pattern. Creature appears. Population panics. Panic causes the creature agony. Creature lashes out. Military responds with force. Force causes more agony, more lashing out. Eventually they kill the creature or it retreats underground. And everyone writes the same report afterward. Voidcrawler, hostile, aggressive, must be destroyed on sight. A feedback loop, Danny said. The worst kind. One built on fear. Dr. Finn activated a spectral scanner and aimed it at Sable's veins. The readings confirmed what Danny already knew from watching. Steady blue. Deep calm. The creature was, for possibly the first time in its recorded history, at peace in the presence of other beings. Over the next 2 days, the team ran every test they could. Empathic field measurements, bioluminescent spectral mapping, neurological scans through the creature's exoskeleton. Every result pointed to the same conclusion. Void crawlers were not predators. They were not aggressive by nature. They were empathic organisms that absorb the emotional output of every living creature within a significant radius. In isolation or in calm environments, they were completely docile. Near a terrified population, they experienced something equivalent to being trapped inside a room where every wall was screaming. The findings went out on the Galactic Science Network within 72 hours. Within a week, every major xenobiology institution in the Mid-Rim had requested copies of the data. Within a month, the Galactic Council quietly amended the Void Crawler classification. Class 9 extinction level threat was replaced with Class 3 protected empathic fauna on Brannick Station. Things changed faster. The mining crew that had disturbed Sable's nest reported 2 more dormant void crawlers in the deeper tunnels. Director Paleth wanted them destroyed before they could wake. The colonial governor, still feeling the weight of public opinion, overruled him. Instead, the station established a buffer zone around the nest. Emotional dampening fields were installed, technology borrowed from medical facilities that treated trauma patients. A team of trained handlers, volunteers from 3 different species, was assigned to monitor the area and maintain calm conditions that IT worked. The 2 dormant void crawlers remained dormant. Sable, guided slowly by Danny over the course of a day, walked back into the lower tunnels and returned to its nest. It went willingly. Danny walked beside it the entire way, one hand on its leg, talking about nothing in particular on the last day before the drifting mule departed. Dr. Finn found Danny at a food stall in the rebuilt merchant quarter. She sat across from him and placed a data tablet on the table. "I have funding for a full research program," she said. 5-year mission to locate and study void crawler populations across the Mid-Rim. "I want you on the team." Danny looked at the tablet. Then he looked at the food stall, where a Sulbari vendor was rebuilding shells that had been crushed 2 days ago. Life going back to normal. "I appreciate that," Danny said. "But I'm a cargo hauler. You are the first person in recorded history to make peaceful contact with a void crawler." I sat on the ground and talked about sandwiches. "Yes, and no one else in the galaxy thought to try that." Dr. Finn leaned forward. "That is not nothing, Danny." He smiled but shook his head. "You will find people better suited for it than me. People with degrees and training. I just got lucky." Dr. Finn studied him for a moment, then picked up her tablet and stood. "If you change your mind, the offer stays open." Danny nodded and went back to his food. That evening, he took the lift down to the buffer zone. The handler on duty recognized him and let him through without question. Danny walked into the tunnel until the walls opened up into the natural cavern where the nest was. The air was warm and still. The emotional dampening field hummed softly at the edges of his perception. Sable was there. The great creature lay curled in the center of the cavern, its body rising and falling with slow breaths, veins pulsing a gentle blue. When Danny's footsteps echoed on the stone, the creature's head lifted. Recognition. That massive "I found him," and the blue in the veins deepened. Brighter, warmer. The void crawler made that sound again, the low hum that Danny felt in his ribs, and stretched its foreleg toward him. Danny sat down one last time. He placed his hand on the warm armor and listened to the hum. "You're going to be okay," he said. "They understand now." 20 minutes later, he stood, patted the creature's leg twice, and walked back up the tunnel without looking back. He was not good at goodbyes. The drifting mule undocked from Brannick Station at 0900 the next morning. Danny stood at the cargo bay viewport and watched the station shrink against the gray surface of the moon. Captain Renai found him there. She stood beside him, arms folded, watching the same view. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "In 30 years of captaining ships, I have never seen what you did down there. It was not bravery. It was not recklessness. It was something I do not have a word for in my language." Danny said nothing. From down the corridor, Oben's voice carried. "Humans have a word for it." Renai turned. "What word?" "They call it compassion." Renai considered this. She looked at Danny, who was still watching the viewport, and nodded once, slowly, as if the word explained something she had been trying to understand for a very long time. The drifting mule entered the trade lane. Stars stretched and blurred. The station disappeared, and Danny Harlow, cargo hauler, veterinary school dropout, the quietest man on a ship full of louder people, sat alone in the cargo bay and thought about a creature that had been screaming for help in the only way it knew how. Someone had finally listened. That was enough.